going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This one's going to be a little bit different, kind of a two-part project. So let's show you guys what we got tonight. Alright guys, so here we are standing in front of a ginormous camp trailer, and this one is actually a really similar project to something we've done before, but the reason it's a two-part project is because this camp trailer has just a regular kingpin on it, and I don't have a way to move this around. I've either got to have the customer back it in, and I've got to hurry and get it done in a day and then have them come pick it up, or chances are I'm not going to be able to get this done in a day, so I've got to build an adapter for the forklift so that I can move this around. I've taken some measurements. I got to brainstorm on what I want to do for the forklift so that I can be able to move this type of hitch around. So I'll show you guys what I'm thinking.
Just be nice.
Just be nice?
What's a shirt?
Hey, what are you saying?
Be nice.
Be nice. That's right. Just be nice, huh?
Dad's a pirate. Oh!
You're a pirate? We got the shop pirate out here today. We've also got the shop pirate's babysitter out here today. I'll show you guys a drawing on what I've worked up for what I'm thinking as far as an adapter goes. Okay, so I'm going to have a piece of 3x6 here and a piece of 3x6 here. 3x6 rec tube, that is. And then I'll have a piece of either 3/8 or 1/2 inch plate welded in between. And then I'll cut a hole for a piece of Schedule 80 3-inch pipe, which the idea of that is almost perfect. That'll give just a little bit of slop for that kingpin to drop down inside of that. So that's kind of my plan for that. We'll go ahead and see if we can't get the parts rounded up. I've got enough scrap that I can build this with what I have. So start getting all that rounded up and see if we can't get it all tacked up. And we'll bring you guys back when we get ready to tack everything up. All right, guys, so let's show you what we got here. So I've got two pieces of 3x6 rec tube. They're 15 inches long. I've got a piece of 3-inch tube on top and bottom. In between, these are 16 inches wide. I did cut two pieces of 3/8 plate on the table, and we'll go ahead and weld these out. We've got our piece of Schedule 80 3-inch pipe here, and I checked it on the pin on the trailer, and it's real nice. We'll start fitting this up and getting it tacked up. Once I get everything tacked up and everything fits the way I like, we'll go ahead and weld it out. This part's probably going to be pretty boring for you guys, so I'll probably jump ahead once I get this all built and ready to go and cleaned up. Then I'll come back and give you guys a look. The other thing that I am going to do to this is I'm going to drill some holes. I'm thinking probably one on either side, and I'll weld a nut in place and probably put either a 1/2 inch or 3/4 bolt on either side so that I can tighten this down on the forks to keep it from sliding in and out. We'll be able to slide this onto the forks, clamp it down with the bolts, and then be able to move around any sort of fifth wheel trailer that has a kingpin type system on it. So let's go ahead and start tacking this up, getting it fit up, weld it out, see how far we can get tonight. I'd like to try to get this done so I can start on the trailer tomorrow. So that's kind of my goal, but it is getting late. So let's see what we can do. We've still got two joints on the other side, this joint here, and our piece of pipe that needs to be welded in the center. We've also got our holes that we got to cut and nuts that we got to weld in those holes. So none of that's getting done without more welding wire. So I guess we'll catch up with you tomorrow when we get more welding wire. All right, guys, we're back out here today. As you can see, we did get some more welding wire. Holy pisser, that is expensive. Can't imagine why. I'll just keep that to myself. As I've had time to reflect on the design of this, I do want to show you guys, I did have a brainstorm, and I do want to show you guys what I'm thinking as far as our actual coupling goes. One of the things that I was worried about is if this bottoms out with the kingpin inside, if I take the trailer up a hill, or if I were to go through a dip or whatever, if the trailer was below me or above me or whatever, I don't want to put that kingpin on a bind and possibly bend it or damage it. The other thing I don't like about it is it would have been bottomed out and there would be friction on this top ring. We'll go out here and I'll show you guys why that's an issue. All right, guys, so here's the deal. So if this bottoms out, it does have a little bit of play, but not enough that I'm not worried that it could possibly damage this if I get it on a bind. So I don't like that. The other thing I don't like is with this bottomed out, it's going to be rubbing on this top plate. I thought that was steel. That's actually plastic. So this type of pin is not meant to bottom out like that. So here's my thought. So my thought is, if I take my piece of pipe, I've cut a circle, and I'm going to drop this in to where it's about 1.5 inches deep. And if I do that, that'll let it settle about right here, and you can see how much movement that gives it. That way, if I start going up the hill with the trailer, it's going to have room to pivot without putting that kingpin on a bind. Now remember, I'm not towing this down the freeway, I'm just moving it from A to B. I'm moving it literally 150 feet. So I think that's gonna work. We'll go back inside, we'll finish welding this out, and I'll give you guys a look when it's done. All right, guys, it's time for a look here. Here is our 5th wheel bracket for moving stuff around the yard. So we do have our nuts welded in place, our bolts. Hot. Screw in there. So we'll be able to crank. I didn't want to go too much past flush, so that when the forks slide in there, they don't hit those nuts. Okay, so I think it turned out good. It's gonna be good and solid. You can see it's not gonna drop in there too deep, so it'll have room to pivot. So now that this is done, I'm gonna get this thrown on the forklift. We'll go over to the trailer and we'll test it out. It is stout. Don't think I got long enough bolts. Well, these ones are. I'll just have to scoot it back on the forks a little bit to get it to bite where the forks are a little thicker. So we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping I'm not too close to the mast of the forklift. Let's give it a whirl. I could also utilize the holes on the end of the forks if I have to. And that may be a good idea. But I think I'll still need long enough bolts to do that. Let's give it a try. All right, well, I don't like how close the mast is to it. So that's the first thing. I'll tell you what, that sucker is heavy. All right, guys, so I just wanted to give you a look here. I tried backing this trailer all the way in. It's so big that by the time I get all the way into the shop, that jack is only about 4 feet inside the shop. And it's real cramped right there. So I decided to pull the trailer back out and do this outside. So I've got the jack about 6 feet outside the shop. Give me enough room to work on it. I can still park the XMT right here by the door, and I think the whip's long enough to get to it if I want to run the XMT. So that's the plan. On a lot of these newer camp trailers, they're hydraulic. Well, as you can see, that's not straight up and down. It's been tweaked a little. These newer trailers, the clearance for these jacks is not very good. And so the customer accidentally bent it over, and what happens is it'll bend the bracket up there. You can see the bracket's all bent up on both sides, so I'll have to pull the jack, scarf the bracket off. We'll work on cleaning it up and getting it ready for the new bracket. The customer did bring me the new bracket. We'll probably have to do some modifications to it. That should work. So tonight I'm hoping I can maybe get the bracket cut off, since I've spent the time to move this trailer here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and unbolt the jack, get it out of the way. We'll have to tie these wires up and get them out of the way. On the last time that I did this, I used the plasma to scarf it off. I think this time I'm just going to use an oxyacetylene torch with a scarfing tip so that I'm not blowing hot metal all the way up inside the trailer. Because if you watch that episode, I actually start the trailer on fire, so that was cool. You live and you learn, you try to be more careful, and you try to be better than you were the last time. So my hope is that I don't start this trailer on fire. So let's get this unbolted. We'll see if we can do a little bit better job and get this one done without starting it on fire. Test. Alright guys, want to give you an update real quick. So, I was able to get that bracket scarfed off. Went pretty smooth for the most part. As you can see, there's a hole here now. I did have another fire up inside there, so that was fun. In case you guys didn't know, if you've never welded on these camp trailers, they fill the bottom here with napalm. And then when you strike an arc up in there, or you throw liquid metal or any sort of ignition source up in there, it goes up in flames. So that's always fun. So I was able to pull this down, get the fire put out. Luckily this time it didn't meld anything. It was just this this plastic, I don't even know what it is. That insulation you can see up in there, it's extremely flammable. So I'll have to repair that. I'll probably spray some of that foam up in that hole, seal it back up when I get done. I'll be able to screw this back to the frame and then spray some foam up in there, and it'll be good as new. So now that this is scarfed off, I'm going to go ahead and hit this with a grinder, clean this all up, take it down to the parent metal, and then I'll take the bracket, bring it over here, and I'll see what I have to do to it. I am going to have to notch that new bracket so that it fits around this I-beam. It's not going to have to be notched too deep, but we do want to notch it a little bit so we can weld up underneath here, and then we'll weld down both sides. I'm not going to weld inside because you want to build these. You want to weld these on so that when this happens, it's not a nightmare to get off. As long as you put enough weld on the outside, it's going to hold the weight. But you also want to make it to where you can cut it off when this happens, because it does happen. You want to try to think of the next guy, try to think of the future, and make it easier on yourself or the next guy or whoever. So that's the plan. So I'll grab the grinder, I'll get this cleaned up. When I get this cleaned up and get the bracket ready to weld on here, I'll come back and give you guys a look at what I got. There is one other thing I want to show you here. So I did do one more modification to our fifth wheel bracket. As you can see, it works good. Now here's the modification that I made to it tonight. I built some custom bolts because I couldn't find any 4-inch full thread 3/4 bolts at the hardware store. So I bought some all thread, welded a nut on there. Now here's the difference. So the bolt actually goes through the fork, which is a better design anyway. And this way I'm not gonna have to cap the ends. But those bolts just drop through the holes that are in my forks. That way there's really no play forward and backwards. I don't have to worry about it sliding off. The other thing it does is it gets this out at the end of the forks, which gives me more clearance up top, because that was making me nervous. So now I have plenty of clearance to move a mammoth trailer like this around. I don't have to worry about our adapter plate sliding off. So just wanted to give you guys an update. I like that design a lot better. It's working really good. So that'll come in handy when we need to use that fifth wheel bracket. All right, give you an update. Got our bracket all notched out and cleaned up here. It's gonna fit just like so. So I'll get it tacked on the top, and then I want to check level. There's about 3.5 to 4 inches of weld on the top of both of these. That's, believe it or not, that's about exactly what's on the factory brackets, so I feel good about it. This is probably a little more rigid because of the way it's built, where it's just a U shape and it doesn't have like an offset on it. We're using our pancake hood because we're outside. I'm also using the Miller Trailblazer. It hasn't been ran in a month or two, so I want to run it anyway. We're using 332 7018. Okay, I gotta go grab a level. So I'm gonna go grab a level. We'll check this, get a couple more tacks on it. All right. Well, obviously, it's halfway in the shop. It's all ski-wampus. So I just want to check the frame. So get a couple more tacks on it. All right, so I'm gonna weld this solid, but I'm not gonna weld the inside so that it's easy to cut off if or when this happens again. All right, guys, quick update. We got both sides welded out. So now, all that's left to do is to put everything back together. I am gonna do a thorough check on the inside of this, make sure nothing's burned. And then I'll start putting everything back together, put the screws back in it. Like I said, I'm gonna spray some foam insulation up in there to seal that hole, and then we should be good. So I'll start working on putting all this back together. When I get everything put back together and the jack bolted back on, we'll come back and I'll show you guys what we got. All right, guys, I'm sorry, but I didn't get a shot of everything all completed. I'm sure you guys get the idea. I have done an episode on this before. It was pretty much the exact same thing. All I had to do was bolt the jack back on, tighten up the hydraulic fittings, and zip tie the wiring up out of the way. We did it. The customer just came down and picked it up. It's such a big trailer. The sooner I could get it out of here, the better. So I appreciate him doing that. I think the project was a success. Customer was happy with it. I think that's going to wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you guys watching. See you on the next one.